something I've come across quite a bit with clients is that, when they first start with me, of course they've got normal life crap that happens to them, and I hear about it, and that's okay. I'm happy to hear about it. But sometimes I'll hear about all the crap, but there'll be no sort of solution around it. There'll be no sort of moving forward. It's just kind of like, here's the crap and I'm sitting in it. And it's really interesting watching them transform. Hello and welcome to another vlog on YouTube and podcast on Spotify by the Fit Minds podcast. Coach Mariah here. I apologise that I'm sitting down today. I have had some grief with my feet through the beginning of the third trimester. They've been very sore, probably not swelling that much, but just incredibly sore with the relaxin hormone. A lot of people think it's the weight of your tummy. Yes, to a certain extent, amniotic fluid and the weight of the uterus and the baby, but also relaxin in my feet. So I can't be on my feet as much as I would like to be. So you might get a couple more vlogs like this until I give birth. Okay, so today we're going to get stuck into the topic of how to stick to your New Year's goals once and for all. What an appropriate topic at this time of year. We all start the year with oftentimes advantageous, nonetheless good intentions to completely transform our lives and flip our entire routines on their heads. And if this sounds like you this year, well then this is the podcast for you. To start fresh with a new year, new me mindset and ideal. And yet somehow, every year, we find ourselves somehow reverting back to our old behaviours and lifestyle. Now that's not me, I'm not saying this is me, it certainly hasn't been for the last 11 years. Nestling into our comfort zone for the winter and waiting until next year or until the time is right. Does this sound familiar? And oftentimes even regressing further than we did before. So, they actually have done studies about this as well, and that one of the major reasons we see weight gain or fat gain over time, specifically even for women, family women, is that each year they gain an additional 5-10 kilos or so, or it could be less, and they don't lose it or they don't keep it off. And so then it just kind of compiles and compiles and they end up in this position, decades later. Without risking being the bearer of bad news, studies have shown that 80% or more of New Year's resolutions are, never resolved. There are lots of different studies that have come out. Certainly there are different numbers. Some people fully succeed at all of their resolutions and some, only succeed at a few, but the round number is this 80% mark of most people don't get there. Never fulfilled, and in fact dropped almost as quickly as they started. So why do we self-sabotage our wildest hopes and dreams? How do we get it so wrong before we can even manage to get it right? And how can we amend this cycle of perpetual start-stop, false sense of security we lull ourselves into? How do we prevent the inevitable disappointment and letdown of throwing in the towel, losing motivation or drive towards our goals? There are a few simple and major causes rooted in our perspective, attitude, strategy and approach, which can lead to our progression's downfall. And no, it isn't the brand of supplement you are or are not buying. It's not whether or not you are, engaging in the most, beneficial program for your goals. Funnily enough, it has a lot more to do with you than it does to do with the external influence. Interestingly enough, it predominantly has absolutely nothing to do with your environment or your circumstances. Yes, to a certain extent, obviously things like the choices we make with food and training, but that all comes from, funnily enough, ourselves, our own thoughts, our own choices. So it starts with us. Although it should be considered that these obvious environmental factors will influence things like our emotions and our experiences, okay? So things that happen in our life will impact our emotions and what we're going through. It should be established before I dig too deep into this vlog that everyone, I've said this before, and I repeat, everyone has faced adversity in the previous year. So in 2023, we're now in 2024, everybody has faced some sort of challenge to some extent, right? Large or small, and possibly a combination of both. In fact, likely. and will face adversity in the coming year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. 2024 is not just your year because you're working with a new calendar or timeline, but it becomes your year out of your sheer determination for it to transform into just that. Because if you think about it deeply enough, what really changes from the 31st of December to the 1st of January? Other than the fact that the sun sets and rises again, time ticks over, the clock moves, like it does every other day of the year. And here's the secret. Have you ever noticed how the same people seem to have terrible years over and over? Goodbye 2023, good riddance, worst year of my life, etc., etc. And then somehow, some seem to just crack the code, and their years seem to be overflowing with accomplishment, joy, and gratitude. Mind you, this was me years ago, 11, 12 years ago, and prior to that, I was convinced that every year gave me a magical, fresh slate. And this is exactly where I went wrong, and many others do in the first place with regards to mindset. The major difference between the two summarized experiences is indeed choices and perspective. Ever wondered how some manage to train in the gym all throughout the year, even in the week of Christmas, or in winter when spirits aren't as high to be summer body ready? Perspective, attitude, planning, method, strategy or methodology, strategy, resilience, execution, reflect, change, rinse, repeat. Okay? Change or adjust. So these are all these kind of like key words required for this process. It's a cycle that's required to be put on repeat to change habits. And these are really the key processes involved in that cycle. The key to succeeding at a goal first lies within the intention of doing so, right? Correct. But that's not just where it finishes. That is just where the process begins. Imagine accomplishing a larger picture goal as kind of like a final destination of a road trip. You are going to need to map that trip out. Ensure that you have enough fuel for the drive. Know where you're going to stop and stay the night. Manage your fatigue and maybe taking it in turns to drive. Manage your finances for the trip and even your resources like snacks, water, and food. See how an intention to achieve an end result, and it's very romantic in the beginning, right, suddenly becomes an unfolded web of intricate planning, timing, and execution. The major issue we see with New Year's resolutioners begins with a surplus of intention and high motivation with a sheer lack of the following strategies for success, but I am going to provide some solutions along the way, okay? Setting realistic bite-sized components of the larger goal to achieve the larger goal, you've got to set those smaller bite-sized components. So we call these micro goals. So I've talked about this in another podcast, which you should listen to if you want to understand this concept, but macro goals and micro goals, how we set both of those and how we accomplish both of them. So most of the time, the goal is just too big and there aren't any sort of steps being put in place to accomplish that larger goal. So those micro goals aren't there. So this often looks like setting a larger, oftentimes overwhelming goal without laying down smaller goals in the lead up to the final project unfolding. Like running a marathon or losing 30 kilos, but not having any sort of idea on how you're going to accomplish such a feat. And this is the earliest point we see New Year's resolution setters fail or fall and never quite get back up again. Having a plan. What's the use in having goals without a plan? If you don't have a structured training plan, structured nutrition, or even a structured and organized week, you will find that you will hit a wall fairly quickly without ticking those boxes. And that's where you can take action, literally ticking boxes, planning out your training, your nutrition, or having someone else do that for you, having a calendar to reference, setting reminders, putting aside the time beforehand to plan ahead. And yes, this is productive and aligned with executing the plan. Fail to plan and you plan to fail. Have a plan somewhere you can see it, somewhere you know you will reference it. And here's a tip. It's not a million sticky notes on your laptop. There are apps for training, okay, applications on your phone for training and tracking your food. Otherwise, if you're not an app person, you can use books. There are apps for planning your weeks and life tasks. And you have calendars and alarms in your phone, okay, to be able to set reminders. Find the method which works for you, or multiple methods, okay, and stick to it consistently. That's what I did. I went from being a very disorganized person, a very, I'm going to and never did type of person, to being a person who knows how to complete things, who doesn't forget that she has appointments, all of the above, because I became more organized and I set myself up in a way that worked for me. May not work for other people. As human beings, we need plenty of planning and reminders in order to juggle the ins and outs of life. We cannot just expect ourselves to remember these additional tasks. Things like going to the toilet, drinking water. Even some people need reminders to drink water, which is interesting because it's a bodily requirement. It's something that you need. But they seem to be things that are pretty instinctive, right? And we have built-in mechanisms in our body to tell us when we need water, we need food. Whereas tasks, jobs, habits, things that you don't have properly ingrained just yet, or things that will be thrown into your life to interrupt your life, or that are not in your usual routine. Even your usual routine, you will need to set reminders. You will need to have something that you can reference, because without it, your brain doesn't just, decide, oh my God, it's 1 p.m. on a Thursday, I need to go to the doctor's. Sometimes, perhaps, but oftentimes not, because we are constantly in a state of distraction and we forget, we're human beings. So it includes everything from things like appointments to bills and their due dates, okay? And their amounts. But whatever you do not avoid planning. Do not avoid planning, because it takes effort. I often see this is that when I talk about planning, or I say you need to plan this, people switch off. That's it, I'm done. Requires effort, no thanks. But weirdly enough, if you don't plan, it requires more effort for you to then try and re-engage in something or to start something, because you don't have the plan in front of you. So it's kind of like walking blind, right? Do not avoid planning, because this can result in a cascade effect down from your lack of planning to lack of execution. A human being, get this, is 42% more likely to achieve something written down or tracked. That is a huge statistic. Far more influential on achieving your goals than any supplement you can take. Routine, okay, is the next one. Establishing routine and consistency initially starts with conscious effort, which often feels like pulling teeth in the beginning. We've all been there. We're probably in our first weeks at the moment, many of you, starting training and going, oh my God, making myself go to the gym, or the pain that I feel in that first week, which does get better with time. Lots of protein, okay? But it feels painful to engage in a new endeavor and habit for a reason, because our brains, right, we have already subconsciously programmed them to function a certain way. And now we're having to reprogram them to function a completely different way. Eventually though, this transcribes to subconscious behavior, okay? So we go from conscious thinking, where we have to consciously put effort in, to subconscious behavior, in which it actually feels strange not to engage in the habit or behavior. So you ever hear those gym goers that say, if I don't go to the gym, I feel weird, or I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. That's when you get to a point where it's a subconscious behavior and habit. Much like brushing your teeth. I've said this in previous podcasts. There was a point where this felt like a pain in the ass, or we could just forget. And yet now we feel weird if we don't. Interesting, isn't it? As children, we would fight brushing our teeth. Creating routine may look like having similar times you train every day. Okay, so lots of repetition. It's very important that you try and have lots of consistency within the structure itself. In order to have consistency, you need to be consistent with your timing, your structure, your routine, your planning. It's almost like clockwork. It has to be like clockwork as much as possible for your calendar, your work shifts, everything like that, wherever it can fit in. Things like doing your washing or your meal prep on the same day each week, doing your grocery shop in advance on the same day before you do your meal prep, so you have your groceries to do your meal prep. And yes, writing these down in your diary instead of expecting yourself to just remember these life commitments and tasks. Yes, you will have to keep a diary. Yes, you will have to, remain organized with this type of stuff. Routine should look fairly repetitive, but work like a system of cogs that turn and help to turn the bigger wheel, okay? And eliminate some of that decision fatigue. And decision fatigue is quite simply your brain having to think a little bit too much about the things you probably don't really want to think about too much. So if that looks like keeping the plan and routine nice and simple so it's easier to follow, that's likely what will work far more effectively than a complex, long-winded approach. Those recipes that you're cooking that have like 50 steps and they've got the most, obscure ingredients, throw them in the bin. They are time wasting. Yes, they exist. They might look fancy. They might taste pretty nice. But by the same token, if it's not working for your lifestyle and the process is dragging out of when you cook these meals, it's taken too long, perhaps, that complex process is just not required. For example, perhaps giving yourself plenty of variety, okay, for your food choices in a single day, but then repeating that same day over and over until it becomes easier. And then maybe introducing a second day of food variety once you have that process down pat. So try to keep the variety across your day, okay? So have something different for breakfast, morning tea, lunch, snack, and dinner, okay? Afternoon snack and dinner. And try and keep the fruits and vegetables slightly different and the fruit slightly different and the meat sources slightly different. My rule is don't repeat the same food item twice in a day. Don't have chicken breast twice in a day. Don't have oats twice in a day. Try to not maybe even have wheat twice in a day. And that really does force you to diversify your food selection. But if it's the same day over and over again, it is pretty simple, isn't it? It's not complex. So, making the goal, on another note, making the goal just too advantageous, right? Or biting off more than you can chew is another big problem. So not just about how big the goal is, but also what you need to do to achieve that goal. For example, you may currently not be exercising at all, okay, or in 2023, or maybe you're even eating takeaway daily. Maybe that's a thing, and that's okay. There is no shame in this. This is what happens when we overhaul our lives. We audit it and we go, holy crap, there needs to be some changes here. So the shifts away from your current lifestyle or your prior lifestyle should be fairly small but manageable, not dramatic and drastic. Why? Because burnout is a very real experience for those who pile too much on their plate all at once or who are making significant shifts and changes away from what they were doing previously. So if it's too drastic, most of the time people won't stick to it because it doesn't feel familiar and it doesn't feel easy, convenient. It doesn't even feel doable. Your mind and body can only take so much in the way of change. Yes, we are creatures of comfort. It's a marathon, not a race. Learn how to pace yourself. Taking downtime or rest time is not failure. So amongst all of this, when you are changing your lifestyle, you cannot go from a couch potato to an athlete in an overnight process. It's not something that's going to happen in a couple of days, not even in a week, not even a couple of months, and you shouldn't expect that of yourself. Know your body and its limits and tune in. If you're feeling absolutely exhausted with your new habits in place, you may have taken the plunge a little too deep. It's okay to taper back and find a more manageable balance before you progress and advance along your journey with adding more processes or even leveling up that difficulty of exercise to your routine and more importantly, what's sustainable long-term for your family, for yourself, your personal and career circumstances and your lifestyle. Sustainability is crucial. If you can't see yourself eating chicken and broccoli past your 8-week challenge, why are you doing it? This is why I designed my own 8-week journeys, okay, around education and sustainability. Not just spitting out a meal plan for someone to follow blindly, but not really learn anything in the process from. It's no use giving someone a set and forget meal plan if they learn absolutely nothing from it. As we all know, once the previous lifestyle and food choices are resumed, once the 8 weeks have ended, and then what? Give yourself an opportunity to engage in something that you know that you can continue onwards for the remainder of the year. Yes, in the beginning, it will be hard, but it gets easier over time. Trust me, it does. And then you acquire the long-term skills required to implement into your lifestyle so that you don't regress back to your previous ways. So, this whole, I'm just going to follow this diet for 8 weeks. I'm just going to follow this meal plan for 8 weeks doesn't work. Because if you think about it, scientifically, mathematically, if you do exactly what you were doing before after the 8 weeks has ended, fat doesn't just permanently stay off your body. It took a while for it to get on there, right? it came on somehow. There's not some sort of magical reason as, to why you gained a large amount of body fat, like age, etc. Funnily enough, it has a lot less to do with it than your lifestyle choices do. Age has a much smaller contribution than pretty much any of the factors required for fat gain. But giving yourself this opportunity to develop an education, and it's not that deep, it's pretty basic. A basic education of your own nutrition requirements and needs. And then that way, you've got it. After the 8 weeks, you can keep going. You've got an awareness of this now. It's not something that you can unlearn once you've learned it. It's like a language, probably not as hard as learning a language, honestly. When you learn about nutrition, tracking your macros and your calories, people think it's really complicated. It's not. Don't overcomplicate it in your mind. It's just like any sort of new task or learning curve. And it's something that, again, as I said, once you've acquired it, you've got it. That's it. You've got this thing for life. Accountability and support. Call on a coach, a friend, a family member, or even a combination of all three. Or perhaps you're self-accountable, like I am. But whatever it looks like, it has to work for you. If you are not self-accountable and need someone to check in with you, that's not a bad thing. Know that there are people, like myself, who literally do this full-time as their choice of career. Support and accountability goes a very long way. You can do some incredible things on your own, but you will go further and faster with someone on your side, in your corner, every day. And I've seen this happen time and time again with my own clients. You do not have to do this alone, and in fact, you probably shouldn't, especially if you're feeling lost. So these people, the support people, your coach, your friends, your family members, someone who is, aligned with you, maybe it's a gym buddy, they're here to remind you why you began and even pick you up on your harder days, the days when you're struggling to find your why. If you don't like others breaking promises to you, why would you break a promise to yourself? Practice affirmations of commitment to your goals, okay? You will absolutely be tempted to quit or take the easy way out. Everybody is, at some point, multiple times. But always remember the promise you made to yourself. This is something that I think gets me whenever I feel tempted to pull out of something or, I can't be bothered, is that no, you made a promise to yourself, Mariah. This is something that you promised yourself and you're not going to let yourself down because you don't like being let down by other people. So it's kind of like, hold on, if I don't want other people to treat me that way, why am I treating myself that way? Finish that promise that you made to yourself. Finish what you started to see it through to the end. Basically, a stubbornness. Have this stubbornness for your goals. Have this no matter what happens this week, I'm still going to do it because I know I want to, because I know that I made my promise and I've got to do this. It's that kind of, no matter what happens, I need to stick to my guns. Comparing our journeys to others or becoming overwhelmed, defeated, or impatient with how far we have to go, okay, instead of focusing on our own progress, our own efforts, and our day-to-day contributions. That's a big one, okay? So many people start fitness journeys and they're like, oh, but I don't look like her. Or, oh, but I'm not as fit as that person. I'm not as strong as that person. Or I feel silly, or whatever it might look like. Or, oh gosh, she's got great results. Look at her. I wonder how she looks like that. It's probably just her genetics. And so then we kind of start this process where we put ourselves down a few pegs and we put other people above us. We pedestal people. And the problem with that is that we just lose sight of what we're doing. We lose sight of our own journey. We lose sight of, hold on, what am I controlling? What's in front of me right now? We become so hyper fixated and focused on somebody else. We don't even have the full story or the full message of what they've been doing. But by the same token, that envy and that jealousy that starts to kick in, and unfortunately, it leads to a dead end. Realizing it is the little efforts every day which add up to the bigger picture, and consistency is not linear, okay? So, no single person who's gone through a fitness or health journey has ever had a perfect day time and time and time and time again. Shit has hit the fan royally multiple times. I know this because I have quite a large client base, right, that I work with, and I love all my clients. But the amazing thing is each one of them has hit the wall with something at some point. In fact, it happens numerous times in a week. Like it could, across the span of my clientele, it'll happen, to each one of my clients at some given point in time in their journey. Not one person is exempt from these setbacks. It just means showing up as often as you can, not allowing the downs to dictate whether we achieve any ups at all. Taking it one step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm sorry for all these cheesy sayings, but my God, they're true, they apply. An understanding and acceptance of struggle, setback, difficulty, and adversity in the process. You must understand it is going to be hard. Stop avoiding what is hard. Otherwise, you'll end up exactly where you were before with the same results, the same year over and over again. And understanding and acceptance that yes, life will get in the way. In fact, it will get in the way often, okay? And that is not an excuse to give up. Do not use life, okay, and what happens as an excuse to give up on yourself. Because imagine if anybody had ever done that. You must think that people just cruise through life and that just nothing shit happens. You know, oh, that person who's accomplishing their goals, nothing bad happens in their day, you know. Their toddler didn't vomit on them 3 times and they'd had to change their gym gear and now they've got to wear a baggy t-shirt to the gym and they're late or they've forgotten something or whatever it might be. You know, that happens to people. They just don't talk about it very much. And it happens to successful people as well. Shit happens to everybody. And it's so important to know that it's not a reason to give up, okay? When shit happens to you, it's not a reason to give up. Building resilience in the face of adversity is a practice commonly noticed amongst successful individuals. They are not gifted. They are not more special than you are. They just look shit in the eye when it hits them and go, well, you know what? I'm going to wipe it off. I'm going to start again and I'm going to keep going. That's resilience. This doesn't mean you can't sit in the suck of it all, but the important component of resilience entails fighting back when you can and looking for reasons you can do something or even finding smaller, more manageable solutions around what you're struggling with as an alternative. Okay, so something I've come across quite a bit with clients is that, you know, when they first start with me, of course they've got normal life crap that happens to them and I hear about it and that's okay. I'm happy to hear about it. But sometimes I'll hear about all the crap, but there'll be no sort of solution around it. There'll be no sort of moving forward. It's just kind of like, here's the crap and I'm sitting in a heap. And it's really interesting watching them transform. As time goes on, crap still keeps happening, you know. It's literally the monkey of life throwing shit at you. Like, it keeps happening to them. But the way they deal with it improves over time. The way they think about it, their perspective. This is what I talk about, perspective. I talk about perspective all the time. They just get better at facing adversity. They become more resilient and they become more solutions focused. Instead of thinking about the problem and focusing on the problem, they think more about what can I do? What can I possibly do? Maybe not now, tomorrow. What can I do? What can I do about this situation instead of, you know, mulling over it to the point where it consumes me? Life is an arsehole at the best of times, and that's the point. We must learn to live with the arsehole part, okay? Push towards things we truly want and know what we want when we want it. There is nothing quite like that sense of relief when we do it, you know, when we come out the other side victorious. And understanding that giving up won't get you any closer. This is one of my favorite sayings. Giving up won't get you any closer to where you want to be. Will it? And in fact, giving up never worked out so well for you before, did it? And understanding that habitual changes and creating habits requires plenty of repetition, mistakes. Mistakes are in there too. It's like repeat, mistake. Frustration, because obviously you're going to experience frustration for the mistakes and having to repeat and start again. But you're not starting from scratch. Sometimes you might be, but you're also starting with new knowledge, new experiences. So, you know, that frustration actually serves a purpose. But just like anything in life, we have learned to do well. It takes time, as I said, please understand it takes time and persistence for it to become second nature. So you kind of have these two things working together. Remember I talked about cogs. Time and persistence. Mistakes are thrown in there, like these little pebbles. Time and persistence, repetition. And they actually slowly just start turning, even a little bit more smoother than they did before. And then a big rock gets thrown in, right? We have to learn how to figure out how to deal with this stuff. And understanding that you do not need to be gifted or lucky to achieve a goal. Okay, I've said this before. I'm not gifted, I'm not lucky. I've said this in so many podcasts. And it's funny, it actually pisses people off when I say it, you know, they're like, I don't care that you've pushed really hard, that's fine. But at the end of the day, if you're going on about how shitty your life is and how much this sucks and this is bad and not negative, and and you see someone succeeding and you see someone killing it at life, it hasn't been handed to them. It just hasn't. Nobody handed me this life. No one. And no one's going to hand you your success. That's so important to understand. You will have to work for it. You are not gifted. You are not lucky. Literally nobody is. Yes, there are child geniuses out there. They still have to study. You know, they could possibly have become a crack addict if they chose to be. But that's the point. This is all a series of choices. There is also no secret. Okay, I'm going to get that out there right now. For anyone who wants to inbox me about, but what about this supplement and what about this thing and what about this device and contraption? No, there is no secret, no magical pill, shake or supplement. There's no way of cheating the system, at least not long term. You know, you go get a tummy tuck or whatever, it's okay. You're tucking the skin, that's fine, it's excess skin. But if you go get liposuction, for example, that is temporary. The fat just gains back into the same area again. It's not permanent. Okay, it's permanent for a period of time until you eat a surplus of calories again and then the fat goes back there. That is how it works. So really, you can't actually cheat the system, not long term. And the only way to achieve a goal and sustain it is through committing yourself to hard work. And understanding that hard work sucks in the beginning, but feels incredible once you've accomplished it. Interesting. Delayed gratification. That's another one of my podcasts. Nothing worth it in life ever came easy. And if it did, it won't last for long without needing tending to at some point, okay? You could have inherited millions of dollars from your parents, but you could also waste that money. You could put it into an investment, you know, the way you put that money, it's up to you. You could gamble it away. There's lots of decisions that you can make from that point on. Yes, obviously you've had a few $1 million thrown in your lap. Never happened to me, but and I don't wish for it either, because it still doesn't make your life any easier. You still have a series of decisions after that point, right? There's a sense of entitlement that might come with it, but only for a certain period of time, and you'll have to work at some point in time. Every single momentous occurrence requires effort. I know, right? How much has society normalized this idea that, well, I want things that require less effort. I just want to sit on the couch and watch movies. So we've normalized this concept that, you know, if I do less, my life is more wholesome. I think certainly there's a difference between being effective and being a couch potato, right? It's like there are things like online shopping, you know. I love online shopping. I don't have to go into shops anymore. It's fantastic. But these types of processes can often then come into our minds where we think that that's how everything in life needs to be. Everything needs to be as convenient as possible. And it actually doesn't work when it comes to fat loss, right? Yes, you're going to have convenient options for meals, convenient options for workouts at home, convenient to a certain extent. But it can't be so convenient that you don't actually end up achieving the goal that you wanted to, just out of the sake of it being sheerly convenient for you. It's not how it works. There is no sort of, cheat code we've found for fat loss where convenience overrules. Realizing, okay, that fear of hard work and effort will be your worst enemy in this process specifically, especially with overcoming things like your fitness and nutrition challenges. Even if you want to quit smoking, for example, if you've got a New Year's resolution for that, the fear of hard work and effort will be your worst enemy. Okay, and a fear of pain and struggling and suffering, that will be your worst enemy. Fear, weirdly enough, is recorded as one of the emotions in life that holds people back the most. Fear. And whether that be a fear that is plausible, or whether it's not, whether it's rational or irrational, fear holds most of us back. Realizing it's not going to be or feel awesome, okay? It's not going to feel awesome all of the time. In fact, it's probably going to feel awesome some of the time and really friggin' hard most of the time. I know, right? And that there will be 100%, there 100% will be days where the last thing that you want to do is exercise or prep your food. I literally just seized the opportunity. My speaker was going flat, and my microphone, and I was like, shit, what can I do? I can go do my meal prep. Very tired. I'm 28 weeks pregnant. I'm very tired, okay? And I just was like, you know what? Stuff it. I'll do it, because later on I'll probably be too tired. I'll do it now. I'll get it done. But there'll be times when you don't feel like doing it and you just get it done anyway. After 11 years of sustaining this lifestyle, I absolutely still have these days often. I've had one of them today. I'm exhausted. I'm still going to go to the gym. Probably not going to do a full workout on my legs, but I'm going to do some bicycle work seated because it'll probably take some pressure off my feet. See that solutions focused thinking? Better than doing nothing. And trust me, there is nothing more that I would like than laying down in this bed and reading all night. But by the same token, it's been a couple of days since I've been to the gym, got some exercise, my feet are starting to feel a little bit better, and I'm looking for these alternatives. So in this process, right, remembering your why, remembering the bigger picture and having that conversation with yourself to keep going no matter what is thrown at you is often the most notable difference between flying and falling. Okay? Why am I still doing this? Why did I start? I was so excited in the new year. Why did I start? That's right. Nothing has changed except the timeline and some things that have happened in my life since that day. So that why is still there. It still exists. You've just got to reignite it mentally. Which brings me to my final point. Well, there's a few here, sorry. But work ethic. Without a solid work ethic, we can find ourselves wishing instead of working. So again, that hard work comes in. Wanting instead of getting, and assuming the good times will just fall in our lap. We know that they won't. Reality is, they don't. They never have. The best times of our life are, yes, waiting for us, but we must be willing to go out there and work for them and create them. There will be days when we don't feel like it, where we literally feel like doing absolutely anything except what we need to do. And it is on these days that we discover what we are truly capable of when we have that internal argument with ourselves and we push back. So it's not just about the initial key, unlocking the path of a lifestyle change, but rather a series of keys, doorways, hallways, and rooms leading you to where you want to be. Okay, think of an escape room, but you never get out. Normalizing the idea that you are going to meet walls, trapdoors, etc., which will challenge you and frustrate you along the way. So it's not just one key. People think about success like, what's the key to success? That one key is a first step, and there is a multitude of steps after that behind that door. You've opened up a can of worms, haven't you, when you chase your dreams? Embrace the shit bits. I've said this before in podcasts. I love this. That's another one of my favorite sayings. Embrace the shit bits. Literally walk headfirst into them and make them your bitch. Okay, so that whole, the monkey of life throwing shit at you, just, okay, cool. Bring it on, man. Bring it on. The monsters under our bed can't hurt us if we look them in the eye and confront them for what they are. If we stop avoiding out of fear and this constant perpetual state of self-talk that we give ourselves that we can't, it's amazing what we end up being able to do from that. You are not exempt from struggle. You are not exempt from struggle. I know you probably don't want to hear this. You're not exempt. No one is. And that is okay. As they say, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. This is not saying your struggles aren't valid or it doesn't hurt or it's not painful. People might think I'm not a very empathetic person. I 100% am. I will give so much grace and kindness to somebody who is struggling. And you'll know that if you're my client. Always. I give kindness in a surplus. But I will call you on your bullshit if I think you're hanging around in it for too long. And certainly as well, we can't really determine whether someone's pain is worth them feeling or not. We can give them empathy. Absolutely. We can give them as much as that as possible. But also one amazing gift you can give to somebody is support. And support to get back up again. I've said it before and I will say it again. Forgive yourself as quickly as possible. Stop dwelling on what you did or didn't do today or tomorrow or last week or next week, that you might not or you can't make it or whatever it might be. And just get to doing what you need to do when you can. Time is wasted on thoughts of regret. Time is a valuable resource when filled with thoughts of improvement and change. Okay, the final puzzle piece involves instilling self-belief, which will take not only a strong inner determination, but also plenty of support from loved ones and friends. So it's about building yourself up, not tearing yourself down. Surround yourself with people who tell you that you can, and banish those who seem to get in your ear as the devil's advocate saying you can't or you shouldn't. And that's very different from, hey, you need a bit more time to be able to achieve this goal. Okay, that's very different. Someone saying you still can, you just need more time. Self-limiting beliefs are not only fed by our inner voice, but the voices of those that we associate with. That's the reality of it. Choose your circle wisely. And yes, you 100% have a choice as to who has the honour of sitting at your table, or even so, who you end up giving information to, who you communicate with. But your biggest supporter must undoubtedly be yourself. Choose words of encouragement and reassurance over self-defeat, pity and loathing. Trust me when I say confidence is a choice. It always has been, it always will be. Choose confidence. Choose to say, yes, I will. Yes, I want to. Yes, I can. We hold the power to our inner voice, and we are the ones with our hands on the steering wheel at all times. Never forget your power. We all have access to it. Our mind is the most powerful weapon in our arsenal. So that concludes today's podcast, nice and short and sweet. Hopefully this really helps you on your journey, along with your New Year's goals. But just remember, it's an entire year. It's not just a chunk of a year. And at any given point in time in this year, if you drop the ball, you can pick it right back up again. You don't have to start till next year. You don't have to wait until summer. You don't have to wait until the right timing. Literally start now. My father used to say to me, I've said it in podcasts before, the best time to start is now. Okay, thanks a lot. Looking forward to doing another podcast for you soon. Bye.